Mm. Good evening, folks. Welcome to episode 24, Marshall Meh. And I'm really going to enjoy this one. I love Steve Grody and talking to him. And we have Renee, the co host with the co most. And he just blacked out on me. There he is. Oh, you're back. Okay. So, how you doing, Renee?
Fantastic.
Good. How's life of growling dog?
Well, I just thought it was pretty impressive. I didn't realize that you're Burton's first Zulu instructor.
Hey, that's right. And I had to put in a ton of rounds, which would, I tell you though, was really fun.
Here I am thinking you were from Connecticut.
Yeah, that too. That was right, but it was really fun just getting acclimated with the shield and its use, and it was uh, it was a lot of fun, educational and fun all at the same time. So felt privileged, honored to be his guinea pig, so to speak. But it was thoroughly enjoyable. Yeah.
Very cool.
So yes, we could play around that when I come up to Canada, along with other basement activities. Do you have a basement in a new place?
Um, I do,
Uh-oh.
but I also have a couple of acres of land that we can
All right,
run
so we can
around
just
into.
hit each other. But hey, we got Steve Grody, so I'm going to be bringing him up. Without further ado, folks, if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. If you have questions, please put them on the right hand side, and I will get to them. If they're not pertaining to what we're talking about, not just to interrupt, but I will write them down and get them down. Um, Steve has given us a list of stuff to talk about that we didn't cover in the first part, and that's what we're going to be doing here in the second part. So without further ado, here he is.
Yeah, I I can't remember what we did and didn't discuss on our list, but the emphasis, the thing that we want to do is see what we can talk about that's not just, social this and social that and who studied with who and rumors and conflicts and anything social, but we really want to try and see if what we can talk about that would be useful.
Okay. No, perfect. And I got the list here. And so number one is emphasis on training according to the probability of one, need, opportunity, and two, success, necessary attributes. How did you get there? Love
Yeah.
that phrase.
Um, so it's always good to first think about how fighting looks unadorned. I think it's more important to have a reference point of not, oh, this really good Filipino martial artist, so that person that's a great martial artist. Well, what does it look like when two knuckleheads try and fight? And whether it's empty hand with weapons. And so right now, let's emphasize like weapons, even though that's going to be for every one time that somebody has a club or a stick. I think they're going to be 1,000 times when it's two guys that look at each other and just decide one of them is insulting somehow, and they end up fighting for reasons that they don't even know why. So there's a lot of knucklehead, empty hand fighting because most people are not carrying around a stick. And even though it's more common to carry a knife than it used to be before the clip, most people are still not carrying a knife. Anyway, so just taking it with a stick, for example, what does it look like when people fight? And what are those? What are they trying to do? What is somebody that's attacking you? What are they trying to do? How do they do it? So there are things that we can look at. They they telegraph like crazy. Their swinging is wild. It's not economical. There's a very bad sense of distance. Neither in other words, the average person that doesn't is not an experienced fighter stays too far out of range or feels that they need to be closer to you to hit you with whether it's a hand or a stick. They feel the need to be closer to you to hit you than they really do because they don't really have a sense of the fighting measure. Um, and so, how do people really attack? And then what are the things that we can do? What are the likeliest kinds of attacks? And then what are the responses that we have that are I'm kind of making it down the list in a way, least labor intensive. So, for example, just if there's something that you can do that's defending and attacking at the same time, like a time hit, which is to say, if there's a weapon coming, if you have a weapon and you can smash somebody's hand, that's one beat that accomplishes two things rather than some kind of defensive maneuver, some kind of block, which leaves you still open to, you're not discontinuing their attack. So the need, if somebody's attacking you with a weapon, generally the average person, it's not going to be a thrust, it's going to be a swing. The average person it's like people understand swinging a bat. And when they swing a bat, they drop it way back, just like they're striking a pitch. So opportunities, that means that one of the things we can at least train for the opportunity of a time hit. In other words, smashing an incoming strike. But that requires, again, going back to necessary attributes or qualities or skills. That means that you have to have footwork so that you can manipulate the distance so that you're not getting smashed while you're smashing somebody. There's also the emotional skill, which is an interesting issue. The issue of feeling like you're focused on doing what you need to do, rather than being in a, well, this can't be happening, or can't we all get along kind of state of mind, or the kind of deer in the headlights, which is just the worst thing you can be. Can't we talk? It's not, it's just too late for that. It's happening. So the necessary attributes there's training that's fun, and there's a lot of training to be functional that's not fun. Edgar Solite talked about the countless hours they spent swinging a stick in the air, hitting tires, hitting a dead tree, hitting things, just a bazillion years of developing that stroke, so that if he hit something, it mattered. And it wasn't going to be hitting somebody and then they hit you back. He wanted to hit you, and that was it. That was the end of the story. He wanted to break your hand with that one strike and follow up if necessary. And that kind of training, solo training, which is necessary, is not fun. I mean, I do a certain amount of minimum weightlifting every week. I have a routine that I go through. I don't enjoy it, but I want to have a certain, it's a health thing,
Sure.
I don't, so it's being a function. There's a certain amount of vanity. I'm not going to be a cover model or anything, but I just don't want to, I see a lot of kids, a half or third my age, and I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
come on, you've got a body, you're abusing it. And I don't even have to know what you're doing to be able to tell you that you're doing that. You've got, is it 5 miles of blood vessels for every pound of extra fat you have that the blood is pumping? Anyway, it's a strain on the body. So I don't like weightlifting, but I do some physical training. I was more responsible doing my stick stroking stuff when I was training with Edgar, because I knew each week he was going to be coming to my place to give me my lesson, and he was going to, I had to be responsible. I didn't want him to look at me like, are you trying to clown me, dude? He's like, you had to be responsible for the authority of your stroke. And so that's not fun, but that's important. And there are a lot of people who would rather do the, all sorts of fun, intricate, playful drills than just have a strike that's hellacious. And then the more enjoyable part would be working with a partner to develop the footwork, because that's more game-like. And So, do you want to keep me
No,
from
I'm gonna let Renee
on
because
there?
Renee's a stick guy, and I think he's got a better appreciation and dialogue. I'm more to have gone like edge weapon centric. Not, I mean, I enjoy stick and I enjoy playing around the Dog Brothers, but I'm not Renee. So I'm gonna let Renee. Renee, do you?
Um, there's a lot to unpack there. And again, I also go back to being a bouncer for well over a decade. Um, I just find when it comes to altercations, especially the same people who are like, I can't believe that this is happening to me, are the same people that once, if they do get an altercation and for whatever reason they get the upper hand, it gets violent really quickly. I don't really, when it comes to striking something and, like even what you're saying, like hitting the hand or I just personally, this is just my own personal opinion. I'm not disagreeing with everything you're saying. For me, I just don't rely on a lot of those hits. I've seen a lot of people with broken hands don't realize they're broken until they're trying to start their car and their fingers are not where they're supposed to be. Um, and I've been there. Even in a stick fight, I've had the this finger split, the bone actually split right in half, and I didn't even really realize it until the guy grabbed my hand. He was going like this to it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess my philosophy and training has changed quite a bit as I've gotten older. I think I just gotten a lot nastier. Like hitting hard and hitting often and making sure that the person doesn't get back up is kind of more. And by back up doesn't necessarily mean like I knock them out and I stomp on them until they're a pile of goo. But you kind of remove the fight from them. I think we've been in that position when you're training with somebody or you're hitting people where they just don't want anymore and they tend to like back off. Um,
Yeah, and I would add to the hand thing. We would be saying that that would be if that's the first thing available, then that's what you hit. But then
mhm.
you don't stand back and then say, is it over? If
Oh no, for
there's
sure.
if yeah, you keep hitting whatever you need
It's
to
different when someone tries to poke you in the chest and you snap their finger. That's usually more. It's not. I must. They're probably getting to that adrenal state, but once you snap someone's finger like that and it points south when you're pointing north, um, that tends to kind of take the fight out of people as well. I'm not trying to be a dickhead and sound like I'm some sort of tough guy or like I enjoy violence. I'm just going by my own personal experience of the things that I've seen. Um, Again, especially when I was working in the club world or even the after hours clubs, um, things just got violent real quick. Like, it's kind of like what happened to Rampage's son there, where, it was supposed to be a bit and his emotions took over. Something else happened during the, that wrestling match. Next thing you know, he teed off on an unconscious person 20 times and broke their orbital bone. Um, I think that can happen a lot quicker than people think.
yeah, yeah. I would say, by the way, just since you brought up the fingers, that's one of my favorite things. Just that people, when you crash, empty hands, and you put generally any kind of curve towards their face, they put up a hand. They don't generally put up a fist, they put up hands, and it slides to a finger grab very easily to a point where you can put somebody down on the ground or snap it if necessary, that before they really realize that that's happening. I think that's one of the most underused joint locks, as it were, that's the
Yeah,
most available.
and again, just going back, I find for myself what really is a deterrent for other people like messing about is not so much what moves I do, but the mentality I have of the situation that I'm in.
Hmm.
I know a guy that was walking down the street and three guys met him after work because they wanted to beat him up, and he threw one guy into traffic, and the other two didn't want to fight him after. So when you have someone who's squared away like that, I think it changes things, and I think that's what's missing in martial arts today is that people not being realistic with the violence that some people are capable of, and how some people don't care about what your training is. So or some people who teach it as well, who are not really, they're just teaching a lot of theoretical filler that may not necessarily work.
Well, I think that's a very popular thing, and I think there's a lot of people they would rather have that thing that seems like they're learning something without really having an appreciation of how far from the real world it is. And I do think that it's interesting that I'm trying to remember the way Edgar Salite phrased it, but he was talking about, he had a term for having that attitude, the fighting attitude. And I think that the variety of the wide range of sobriety or lack thereof, given that there are a lot of people, depending upon how unsober they may be, they may not be perceiving well, but nonetheless, I think that people being mammals, there's a lot of nonverbal communication, and that there's a certain attitude that other people would find very uninviting. They may
Mhm.
be looking for a victim, but they just get a feeling that this person is just not the person to be that victim.
I think the problem, Steve, is that today a lot of people don't get that because of whatever entitlement or whatever's going on in their lives, that they think, it's like the people who will sit in the middle of a highway to block traffic to protest some bullshit, and then the person runs them over and they're like stunned that they got run over.
Mm.
To me, that's the kind of the mentality I find the kids is like, they'll poke a lion, or they'll poke just some dude with his kids walking around, and the guy grabs a guy and busts him up, and then they play the victim afterwards, right? It's just I think we've, a- as a society, at least here in North America, I think we've lost touch of you know what's safe and isn't safe, and trying to impose your will on somebody who's not going to allow it, has consequences, especially with some of the older folks that I know.
Hey, I'm an older folk.
Yeah, but you're nice.
I like to believe, like, you know,
Yes.
yeah. So the thing is, again, the attribute training. It's like, or skills. The whether whatever the tactic is, do we have enough juice to make that effective? Whether striking a hand, striking the collarbone, striking an ear, or just striking a person with your fist, is that going to make a difference? And what just realizing that we need to put in the time, that is not always fun time to develop those things. That's one thing. Um,
It
I
should
mean,
never be fun, in my opinion.
you know, well,
It
what I
should never, listen, like, the infamous basement session that Dean and I had. It wasn't fun for me. Like, I had a guy who's throwing me around just because I had a knife in my hand, and he managed to grab my hand, and then he started throwing me around and like disarm me. It wasn't fun. And I think that's why I liked it, because there's something really scary about that. Like, if I go to someone's class and everybody's laughing and joking and talking about what they had for dinner that night, like, I bounce. I'm out. There's there's something missing there.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that you can't have fun completely, but I think when it comes down to training, it's like, okay, shut up and move. Um, I c it just again, that's just my opinion.
Right. I know that when I train, that there can be no shortage, even if it's focused. There's no shortage of laughter because there's surprise. Who's trying to zoom who, and
Mhm.
how
Hmm.
well did they do it? And it cracks me up because not just because there's that element of like, oh man, you got me. Damn it, you.
Yeah,
I was trying to fake you out, and you got my fake and used it against me. That it's still useful.
yeah.
It's still proper training, but I don't know. It's my predilection to enjoy training, even if however practical it is. Um, a thought experiment. It's interesting. As a thought experiment, I think that it would be interesting for people to say, okay, assume that I was some kid in a town that didn't have any, there was no such thing as the interweb. So I couldn't go there for instructional videos, for better or for worse. And I had to, but I wanted to figure out how to fight. How would I do it? What would I do? I have a good friend, and we're not completely stupid, but we're robust. Okay, Jimmy, how? Okay, if I had a stick and you had a stick, how would you attack me? Or if I had a stick and you didn't have a stick, how would you attack me? Or what would we do with it? If we're just empty hands, what could we do about it? And I think that that would be an interesting thing to kind of think from scratch rather than just think, well, my system has all the answers. And this kind of leads back to the Caballero story, um, Edgar's first important teacher. That the way I understand it from Edgar was that he was this, kid, this teenager that was watching these stick matches, and he was looking at them, and he was like, this is, I could come up with something better than this, and he kind of did. He he worked on, he thought, I just need to develop what he called a meteoric stroke, a strike that just had, all the string, just an incredibly fast, powerful strike, hitting from different angles. And that was his thing. And he would think about smashing the hand, following up to the head, smashing the hand, following up to the head. It was the most basic, in a nutshell, kind of strategy. And he was in hundreds of challenge matches because my understanding is that he went around from village to village and said, okay, so you got a stick champion here, and I challenge him, and I bet on me, and sign this waiver that you won't come after me if somebody dies, because somebody probably will, and supposedly that's how he made a living. And so it wasn't, get in there and do, it was like, it was just, speed and power and a basic timing and controlling the distance, and that was something that he did not learn, he figured out. And I also think that if somebody is thinking about figuring, it just occurred to me that if you're learning from somebody, then you're kind of beholden to them, and you're not a lot of times being responsible for your own training. Saying,
Surrendering completely. Okay.
I'm going to class, or I'm going to, yeah, maybe you're going to class, but that doesn't mean, are you really looking at whether you're able to kind of do your thing or not? And I think that the more you're on your own in any kind of form of action, the more you work on it, because for one thing, it's special, and you just tend to take more responsibility for it because, oh, well, I'm studying with the great so and so. Well, who cares? Who cares? I study. Let's say that I studied JKD. Well, Bruce Lee was great. Well, so what? So what? Edgar Salite was great. So what? It doesn't make me great. It doesn't make,
That's a great point. Honestly, it's I find some of the best people that I've come across, some of the the top tier fighters that I've met, are people who train with certain people, but they didn't become their clones.
yeah,
Because a lot of people that I've trained with, or I can tell who has trained with whom by the way they move because of their teacher, right? They're trying to, like, I had a JK instructor, and everybody moves like him. And it's just like that movement works for him because he understands the way his body is and the way he moves. And, it's not going to work for you. And, and Dean and I had a conversation about this where I was looking at people who are just hunched over all the time when they're doing certain things. And I was like, I started thinking maybe they train with someone who's much smaller than them because
right.
there's
That
no
was really
reason for you
interesting.
to be hunched over like that with your head out while you're swinging, because even a shitty boxer will knock you out. Um,
There were people who supposedly held their hand a certain way because they trained with Ed Parker because he had broken his finger, and so he held his hand in a certain kind of way that, and all the students were imitating that.
Oh my
But
god.
because he had broken his finger. So yeah, I
Yeah, I had a guy who was one of our in our group. He would always snap his fingers before he'd do something, and then next thing you know, like five of the students are snapping their fingers before they throw punches, and it was like, it, I know
That
it's small and irrelevant, but it drove me bananas. Like I would just sit there and I just like, just stop, stop. Like he's
well, actually, you want them to keep doing it so you can time their
So
hit.
you can,
Man, you're just like magic. You always know when I'm going to punch. Yes, I do, because I can
yes.
hear it coming. Snappity snap.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because again, relative to useful stuff, there was a very extensive, there was an extensive curriculum learning Lameko. I mean, with Dan and Asano too, but needless to say, but with Edgar, but in all my sparring with Edgar, I don't remember him doing anything other than fake strike, number one, two, maybe a backhand strike. It was not a single abanico. I'm trying to remember
We
if we
had
ever,
that conversation too, Renee Albanico.
I remember if I'm trying to think if he ever did um, a dobleti. Um, I mean, I figured out how to work a dobleti into our sparring so that it was useful to, because I knew he was going to fake me. I knew he was so good at faking me, and I was like, really. I mean, I figured out other ways that are better than what I'm about to describe now. But I thought, well, if he fakes me, he knows that as soon as I cross the center line, that stick, as soon as my hand passes my nose, his stick would be there, just by my head. And so I thought, okay, well, what can I do? And so I used the first part. There's a small dobleti that I worked on. So it didn't go big dobleti, but a small dobleti, just at the wrist. So it would be just past the center line when I'd come back to the second strike, and I was able to apply that. It's like, oh, you faked me up, but I was there at the center line one time, and it was
my
he had a saying. He was like, oh, if we were in the Philippines, you would be eating the roots of daisies.
yeah my friend Andre, rest in peace, from Montreal. He could pull that off like with full power, and he would do it. It was horizontal. Like the first one would come in at full power, and then the second one would follow it just like a second behind. And the amount of times that I took that shot across the jaw, it's like, if it wasn't for me wearing a saber mask at the time, I would probably be speaking like Clint Eastwood still. It was pretty crazy. Like he really, really worked on that. The timing on that was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is interesting for most things that we can say don't work. There's somebody that makes it work, and then there are things that just it takes what's the effort. It's like the difference between knowing something and being able to apply it, and again the attributes and the timing and the state of mind and all that. That's So the second thing we had on that list, Dean, was I
Second
mean,
thing I have is finding range as a base essential skill. Don't just stand at a pre-assigned distance.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of like it's kind of like um, whatever that infomercial was a million years ago, where the guy says, "Okay, so let me tell you how you make some money. First, you take $1 million, and here's how you invest it." Wait. How did I get the $1 million to invest? Okay, we're missing that step, And so much training is like it's assumed that I stand at this range or you stand at that range, and we do said long range or intermediate technique, but there's no finding the range. There's no moving around to find the timing according to the distance. And I think that's the reason we have footwork. And if we're doing footwork, but it's not about finding the range to apply something, then we might as well be, doing disco dancing, because the footwork is for a purpose. It shouldn't be theoretical, and it's so the footwork is a response to offensive or defensive or setting something up, and so we want it to be where there's it's a real mistake to go from a bunch of set technique to just free sparring with no bridge in between. It should be progressive, and that means that you learn, here's an option, here's another option. Now, how do I find between option one or option two? Or like, just if again, we're talking with a student, and once we've learned what is number one, without telegraphing, or number two, without telegraphing, and we'll come back to that because that's a big bear of mine, then I want to start to move towards them so that they have to adjust the distance so they're not too close or not too far to get that strike. And if I bring the stick way back and stick my big stupid head in their range, then they know to put that stick on my head while still being at the furthest range that they can be for the sake of safety. If they missed and I came back with something. So the footwork, so to say, okay, I'm going to now do an inside sweep. Okay, so that means that we just assume that we stand at our prearranged distance rather than finding that out of any kind of flow. And that makes it greatly likely that it will never become functional unless there's a way to move and find the opportunity out of a bunch of other possibilities. So, responses?
No. I'm just enjoying what you're speaking on. So, do you think the choreograph where the community is going, not just FMA, but the complacency, is because it's just easier to relay that type of, I guess, training or teaching, or
you mean because of a group setting?
possibly group setting, or maybe it's just easier for an instructor just to kind of just have the student just stand there and just give, pretend the magic is all there. I mean, I'm not saying I know.
No, that's absolutely the case. I know that I think that you read some of Bruce Lee's writings, and you see that he knew that even in a small group, it's still easy. Learning something, we talked about this before, whether it's learning how to play an instrument, whether it's learning how to draw the figure, whether it's learning how to do graffiti, whether it's learning how to, build a house, it requires a mentor. It requires a one-to-one relationship, because to really get somebody to understand the timing is a very intimate thing. No. You see how you're a little bit too far, a little bit too close, a little bit, it can't just be this rote thing. Everybody do like this, because it's amazing how people can do what they think you're telling them to do and still miss the point of the feeding or the doing. And we mentioned non-telegraphic stuff. So coming back to base skills, if I have my deadly 4-color pen, okay, and I go like this to strike you, you either can hit me now, or you can time your counter strike. If I give you the minimum amount of time available, then offensively or defensively, and even if you are a person striking, and I want to smash your hand or your head, and I prep my strike like that, that gives you time to abandon ship or do something else. And so, I know that we've talked about this before, and I think, why am I even saying this? Everybody knows that. And yet, I see it all the time. I see people saying, okay, so I go like this and I go like that. And I'm saying, okay, well, so again, our base analogy here is, okay, I'm a boxing teacher and I'm going to teach you to jab. I'm going to teach you to go and jab and cross and jab and cross. Wow. I would hope that you would walk right out of the gym without even knowing anything. I would hope you go, yeah, I don't think so. And so, and it's even built into some systems. where you stand like this, you put your foot back, you bring your stick back or bring it back to here, and then you go forward. Well, and I'm not saying that those people that do that couldn't be functional. They just have to be better than whoever it is they're up against. And if their timing is better, you can still have an inefficient structure and still come out on top. So it's not like if you're perfect, everything will go your way, or if your structure is messy, it could still go your way as long as you're better and luckier than whoever you're fighting. But just as a base skill to do a non-telegraphic strike, and I will say for myself that's a challenge because the human instinct is to telegraph.
We're wired by nature, right?
Yes, the human instinct is to telegraph. That is, and we know that because all boxers are trained to not be telegraphic, but you still see the best boxers in the world telegraph or drop their passive hand before they throw that rear hook or whatever. And so natural human combative habits, which are not good, are very deeply wired and therefore not easy to get rid of. You can't just say don't telegraph. It's going to have to be a repeated thing.
Repetition and changing your mind. No, I totally on the attribute. I totally agree with you on that. That's fascinating. Like it's hard to reprogram that hard wiring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a time when Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist and long time Zen practitioner, had Danny Kahneman on the show. And Danny Kahneman if anybody doesn't know him, they should look him up. Kahnn. Anyway, look it up. You'll find it in Google. They'll correct your spelling. Danny Kahneman. And Kahneman and Tversky were the Lennon and McCartney of psychological research. And they came up with these heuristics of human bias, these rules of thumb of natural instinctive human bias. And Sam Harris is a very smart guy, but he was asking towards the end of this interview with Danny Kahneman, so how are you hoping that how do we get rid of those biases, and how will human beings evolve past these biases? And Danny Kahneman said, we don't. We're human beings. Unless you change the genes, the structure of our genetic code, those things are stuck there. The best you can do is be aware of them and try and pay attention to what you're saying and how your biases are applying. But we're human beings, and there are certain things that are just not going to change about
just being totally get rid of them, right?
Yeah. And the telegraph is hard, but to the degree to which I get rid of my telegraph is the degree to which I am ahead of whoever it is I'm moving with. Is the degree in which I can take advantage of their flaw, and the degree to which they have a hard time taking advantage of my movement.
Right, just be tight and compact.
And so students for years, I'll say, I got you because you telegraphed. You telegraphed. And somebody could say, I'm listening to myself, and somebody could say, well, Steve, I guess you must be a really crappy teacher if they're still telegraphing us. Well, it's just hard to get rid of the telegraph, especially when there's an emotional component thinking, oh, I want to get you. And so there's this little bit of it's easiest for them to get involved, let the emotion take over and takes over our structure rather than have a balance between an emotion and a physical structure.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because I just posted a video recently. It was like 16 years ago with Eric Knaus and I had a stick and he had a knife, and he was just chambered here. Actually, hold on, let me just. It was like chambered right here.
Right.
It wasn't a tactical banana; it was like an actual knife.
Right.
And where's the knife coming from? That side. How many times did I stop it? None. It just he has a way of just making you fall into a weird sense of security, or it's almost like that it's like a cobra. It's like it starts moving around, then you start moving around like it. So there are people out there who will use that telegraph to their advantage, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, yeah, that is a deliberate thing. You can telegraph to draw a response which you can take advantage of, or hopefully will take advantage of. And speaking of Eric, I mean, that's just somebody who has spent the time getting in there and doing it in a way that's unafraid so that he can pay attention, and spending that time, he's learned how to read. And he seems like his his emotions are pay attention. His emotions aren't like, oh no, I'm worried, or I look out. It's like he's just paying attention, and he knows what it's like to get hit, and he's not worried he's not worried about that. So
Yeah,
he can pay attention.
he's one of the few people that I've met that it's all business. It's nothing personal until afterwards. He's like, "Hey, are your ribs still broken?" You know. No, it's I mean that. Like I remember the first time I clashed with him, and sometimes you clash with people, you change a couple of hits, but I had an internal dialogue when our range is closed where I was like, I don't want to be here, and he's not letting me go, and the pain is overwhelming, and I really want to leave, and then it's like I finally leave, and I realize I'm busted up, and then he's like, oh, that was, and like he disconnects from the fight for a split second to say, hey, that was pretty good, and then he reconnects, and it's like, oh, it's gonna happen again, and there's nothing I can do about it, which to me was like a beautiful thing. Um, but again, I think his fight IQ is much higher than most.
Yeah, I mean, my when I did my little bit of Dog Brother stuff, it was before I had done any training with Edgar, and Edgar made me have a much better stroke. And I'd like to believe I would have during my Edgar period, particularly when I was really maintaining my stroke better than I have been recently, that I would have done better. But I still wouldn't have done noticeably better probably with Eric because because Eric's Eric, you know. And also, it was interesting to do whatever training I'd done, but then do a bunch of stick swinging for a long time and on the grass, on the lawn. It's exhausting. And that goes back to another basic attribute thing that if I want to be able to pick up 30 pounds easily, I've got to be able to pick up like 80 pounds with a real effort. And so if I want to be able to, as Dan and Asano so properly observed, if you run out of gas, it doesn't matter what you can't do anything. And so you have to have enough conditioning and enough stamina, and enough cardiovascular ability to last what will hopefully be over in a short time. Because in a fight, most people it's a very quick because it's emotional. It's also can be exhausting, just the emotion of it. And
That's
so,
the best time. Like honestly, like my last seminar that I taught, there's a couple guys that were, like they were just like they couldn't move, they could hardly breathe, and they're like, I need to take a break. And I was like, no, this is where you learn this is where you learn the most. And I literally stood them up and I threw them back in there, and they were doing better when they were tired and exhausted and couldn't breathe than they were when they had all that energy, because now they have to really be careful. They have to really focus. They have to really conserve what's going on. And
right.
I found for me, and again, this is just the way I like to do things. I like to like push people till they're exhausted, and then we start training, and I find it just opens up a whole a whole new world. It just because a lot of people go to their classes and they're like everything is safe, and oh, you want to drink some water, and oh, you want a band-aid. It's for me, it's like all that stuff doesn't matter to me. It's just like we're gonna go, and I'm gonna be there right beside you, and I'm gonna be as tired as you are, and then I think you can get a lot out of it, a lot more out of it. But again, I think deep down we just have to find out why people are there, and if it's just to get their cardio, kickboxing, whatever, then I guess you can take that in consideration.
Yeah, but it's still nonetheless, I think it's still a relevant thing that just like, for example, with if we're talking about stick striking, that I want to know that a stick fight, if I'm at all efficient, should last a very short time. Okay, actually, hopefully an empty hand thing will last a very short time if I'm being efficient. And again, effective, and let's throw in luck too. So that being said, I need to be able to strike a stick with enough times without losing my forearm muscle strength and shoulder strength and just the ability to wield that stick, so that it doesn't end up just being. I like the term that Edgar used, woggle. That thing you do when you strike and you're sure that you're going to actually hit something, and then it's not there, and your stick kind of loses all of its form because you thought, oh, I've got it, and it's not there. And so to have a disciplined strike and be able to strike for a period of time with some authority is a basic. I'm just saying that's a basic goal.
Yeah. Again, when people ask me, like they want to do a gathering and they want me to train them or teach them a few things. Like when they say, "What should I be doing?" and I was like, just go in and if you get the crap kicked out of you, get the crap kicked out of you. Just go in and take that information, take it home, and kind of go from there. My first when I first went to my first gathering, I was like, all I want to do is survive. And then I just realized it was like the wrong mentality.
Mm.
It's just like, yeah, I survived, but so what? Like, I want to get to the point where it was just uncomfortable for people, for me to be there, whether I'm winning or losing. I just don't want it to be comfortable. And I found that changed the way I train. It changed the way I fight. But yeah, like for me, when people first go in, I just say go in, just try not to get knocked out, and and then we'll work on we'll look where all your bruises are, and we'll work on that side.
That sounds like classic whole part training to me. Somebody wants to learn swimming from a coach. The coach says, okay, get in the pool. Let me see you swim. Okay, I see you doing the activity. Now this is what I want you to try. And your thing is like do the activity and then stand back and look to see what you can learn from that, rather than try and learn these parts and then apply those parts in a unified way, which is a very difficult thing to do.
I'll tell you this, like, so I fought before I did, like I did some Innisano blend and I did a little bit of bikini, but a lot of stuff was just me getting together with my friends and just beating the tar out of each other. And after, every Sunday morning, to the point where I go to a gathering. When I started training after that, like really taking my training serious, that's when the Pikiti and any other FMA or anything else I was doing started making sense, because I think it's different to view it as a here's your 64 attacks, and then it's like, okay, you've had the crap kicked out of you. This is the way we do 64 attacks. How does that, how do you translate that? And it's like, okay, well, those 64 attacks are cool, but I'm only going to use four of them because that's what I normally use when I hit.
No, I think that just sounds to me like what you're talking about is looking for the gap between knowledge and actual applied skill.
Yep.
And how do we get that? And by the way, so this let's just say this takes us to topic number three as a useful and relevant
Mm.
segue, which is to say,
Oh, and by the
I
way, I never got a list because Dean doesn't send me lists.
Oh, I'm so
Uh,
sorry, but I'm going to say
uh,
right. So, okay,
so
so Renee,
does the number three come with fries? I don't know.
You
number
have to. Well, you have to sign. You first have to sign a privacy oath, a blood oath that you won't reveal the secret questions.
I don't have any blood.
Yeah. So it's really so much of what we do is intuitive, and in a sparring situation, so much goes by so quickly, and it's on. Did anybody here say they were tough?
no, but Maynard he's throwing us under that umbrella, so maybe we should just accept it. I don't know.
I'm. We'll depend on Renee for the tough guy part. In
Oh
any
no,
event,
no, no,
in
no.
any, in
Hey,
any
listen,
event,
man. I'm
in any
I'm
event,
like I'm the most mellow person you'll ever meet in your life.
in any event, the videoing oneself and then playing it back in slow motion
Mm.
is amazing. It's kind of like, really, I was doing that,
Uh,
and
Wait, we're talking about training and fighting, though, right?
we're talking about
Okay, I just want to make
We're
sure.
talking about. Well, no, well,
Because
that's my secret.
some of the slow motion videos that Dean sends are.
I always fight in slow motion. That's my secret. Um, it's the it's really interesting. Um, when I did a bunch of knife stuff with my partner Dan Southworth, it was just amazing to slow it down and take a look at it, because it wasn't just, oh man, this is sad. You're doing so many bad things. You're telegraphing. You're doing this. You did. Yeah, I was actually doing things that I didn't realize I was doing in the moment
Yeah.
that were good. Or he was, and it was just a way of taking a closer look at what we actually do. And then you can say, okay, how do I try and keep trading that good thing I did, and how do I get rid of that bad habit that I was doing? And so this gets into, again, I think we probably talked about it in the first meh, and that is what could be called Systems 1 and Systems 2 training. Again, Danny Kahneman refers to it in those terms. Systems 1 thinking is intuitive. You see a dog, you don't go, what is that creature generally? Unless it's some weird breed, you go, it's a dog. You know that person's a person. And systems 2 thinking is something where you need to figure it out. And I think that in martial training, the most efficient thing is to go back and forth. You can learn some. You don't generally just start with nothing. Number 3 is the use of slow motion. And it's also the strike. Anyway, so systems, you start with some kind of structure. Although before even talking about a structure, I like to talk to people about what seems to be natural human combative instincts and how messy they are. Then I can say, okay, this is how we want to move. Then I move with them and try and get things to be a comfortable actual response to some actual thing I'm doing rather than choreographed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move around and we see where it gets messy. And then we go to, and we start with a structure, that's systems 2, because we're explaining things. And then we move it around and get it messy or interactive so that it becomes intuitive, so people have responses without thinking. And then we take a step back and say, okay, how did that work out? Is there something we can do about where we were lacking in our response, or was it good in the response? And then we go back to figuring something out. Then we go back to the whole thing of just interacting, and hopefully things get a little bit more efficient. So it's like a spiral. You would some analysis, and then just doing and responding, and then take a look at that. And so it goes back and forth between systems 1 and systems 2. And I think that's a really good way to do it, because if it's all systems 2, in other words, figuring things out, it's just going to be this intellectual thing. And if it's all systems 1, it's just going to be, are you tough enough to just kind of get in there and maul and get mauled? And just hopefully that's good enough. And Bruce and Dan and Asano talked about that. He said, Bruce talked about there were his ideal student was not intellectually bound or physically bound. The intellectually bound students were the ones that knew all the theory, but they were gun shy. They didn't want to get in there and mix it up. And then you had the ones that were physically bound, and they would get in there and they just wanted to duke it out, but they weren't able to step back and say, were they being efficient? Could they be more efficient? What could they do that was better than just being swinging harder? And he wanted somebody that had that balance between getting in there, but also being able to analyze their, what they were doing. And, otherwise, and Dan in Asano, he would talk about sometimes, from time to time, he'd say, I get people coming up to me, we do all this equipment training, and then everybody says, oh yeah, but let's do a sparring class. And you know what happens? Everybody shows up for the first class.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of people get knocked around, and then it's half the people the next class, and then it's half of that the next class, and then finally in the last class it's just Bruno that shows up, He's like, where did everybody go? You know, and he said, and that's why I'm not always doing a sparring class because there's a really high attrition rate.
Mm.
And that's why this guy, Johnny Lee, back in the day, was the guy that everybody loved to spar with because he was the guy that would match whatever pressure you wanted. If you were sparring and you wanted to go light, he'd go light. If you wanted to go medium, he'd go medium. If you want to go hard, he'd go hard. And he was kind of like this great gentleman sparring partner because you just kind of say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the level of intensity that you want to do. Okay, I'll work with that.
I wish I would meet people like that, but it's just so few and far between. Like,
Isn't
listen,
it?
like when I was in Finland, I literally after like 14 hours on an airplane, I dropped my shit off at my the guy who sponsored the seminar, and we went to a park and we fought. And then we did some sparring, and everybody was really cool because they knew we were going to fight that weekend, and everybody was cool with it. But there's been times where I go to a Muay Thai class and we're just doing ping pong drills, and then the kid or whoever's in front of me, for whatever reasons, decides that's the day that he wants to do like a head kick. I'm just like, we're just supposed to be like, even just tapping. We shouldn't even be wearing gloves. And then it just turns into like, who can hit the harder 3 times in a row. Um, that stuff just drives me crazy. Like, even like, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I've had a few, you know, things like that. But
Listen
hey,
to
listen, if you can find someone like that, then that's
A
amazing.
treasure. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
But God
my
damn it, I find these days,
yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just like maybe it's me. Maybe I kind of give that energy off a little bit. Um,
Oh, yeah, I know. I want to hit you, and we're just friends.
yeah, it's it's funny. I picked up my son from his summer camp the other day, and he's like, "Daddy, you always look angry." I'm like, "Well, I'm not angry. Like, I'm actually happy. Hanging out with you and everything else." He goes, and he's like, "Why do you look angry?" I go, "So that way people don't mess with you." And he's like, oh, "Okay, cool."
It's funny. I don't. I yeah, yeah.
It's I don't know, and I guess that happens as well, And I when Mark Medeiros and I did that seminar not too long ago, and some of the people that showed up were actually like nervous, or they had some nerves about showing up because they had no idea how it was going to be. Right? They're like, "What version of Renee are we getting?" And for me, it's just like we had fun, and then we did some hard sparring afterwards, and I was like, these are the same people that you were saying before. Some people who just don't want to fight or don't want to spar. I never tell people when we're going to do it, and usually I make the drills um, with enough energy that it makes them. You are doing it. It's like there's been plenty of times after a seminar where it's like, hey, anybody here never sparred before, and they put up their hand. I'm like, you already did. You just don't know it. Just now, go buy some equipment and jump in. You can do it.
All right. So we already talked about
I got it
the
right
use.
here.
Yeah,
We spoke about number 3. I don't know if we're jumping to number
Number
yeah,
4 or 5.
three was the use of video in slow mo. Number 4, you kind of touched upon the
yeah. I
Caballero
touched
story.
upon the Caballero story, which is
Yeah.
the kind of like saying like somebody who did start from scratch and just thought, I'm just going to see what I can do, and he was responsible for developing a meteoric stroke and the timing and the distance to make it work. And then, but so let's go to number 5, which is
I got
you
it here.
know,
Let me read it off.
yeah,
Number 5 on my list is Dean at the Flamenco Club. I don't know if you saw that picture.
No,
yes, I
I was gonna share it to him in person, and
because he's a master with those castanets.
you have.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
telling
he's
you.
a.
I like to keep that just kind of low, though. You know what I mean?
You
But
know,
yes,
but the role playing the basic Goomba,
yes.
and so there's actually 3 things there under number 5. So
Sorry, guys. I'm going to be like back in like 30 seconds.
Right.
okay, okay,
So I got the.
we're not going to be able to talk trash about you enough in 30 seconds.
I know.
Oh,
Anyway,
there's
but
there's always there's time to talk trash in 30 seconds.
so so when sparring, so people talk about sparring, and there's a lot to be learned from sparring. The problem, or a possible, I'm going to call it a problem with sparring, is that if you're sparring with people that you're used to sparring with, you get used to who that person is.
Yes.
And it is unlikely that you're ever going to be in a fight, an actual fight with somebody, and you know how they move. And also the person, so it could be a real disadvantage. So for example, and this is a slight digression, but it's a relevant one. There was a time when Dan Inosano was doing, he might have been doing 3 schools, but there were 2 schools. There was one in Culver City that he was running with.
Seafood Richard, right?
No. That was the IMB. This was with the Wing Chun guy who was the school brother of Bruce Lee. I'm spacing on his name. It's terrible. Anyway, but But the point is, he had these 2 schools. He had the Torrance Academy.
Yep.
Before the IMB, and he had the Culver City School, and he trained the people in 2 different ways. And he said one school did more equipment drills, and the other school did more sparring. And then he got the 2 schools together to see how if he noticed any difference between the groups. I mean, this is Dan the scientist saying, okay, well, let's see, I did these 2 different kinds of emphasis of training. Do I notice a difference between the groups when these 2 groups get together? And really what it boiled down to were the individuals.
Was it universal, like a universal generic?
Yeah, it wasn't really, it wasn't a universal. And he said that one of the things that was interesting was that one of the advanced students at the Torrance Academy, the Kali Academy, who was normally very confident because he knew he was advanced and he knew who he was sparring with, and so he would spar in a very confident way, normally. But now he's up against somebody who was like from this other school, but was really relatively a beginner. But he was very shy and he was very cautious because he didn't know who the guy was.
Of the unknown. Okay.
Yeah. And so, so one of the things that I think is important in training that I like to do is, well, it's not unethical because he said it's unethical to train that way. Nobody was getting hurt. He was just comparing training methods. It's not like they were all of a sudden.
Yeah, you like throw them to the wolves or something.
Yeah, it wasn't like, okay, we're out on the.
Hey guys, here's Eric House. I want you guys to.
Yeah. And he wanted to know for himself what would be a better way to train people if there was a noticeable thing. But so what I like to do is there's a certain amount of sparring kinds of things I'll do with students, particularly with weapons, because you can control that a little bit easier, I think, than the empty hand, where it just can get stupid easy.
Or mayhem, like real easy, right?
Yeah, and I just want to keep all my brain cells as however limited they are right at this point. So what I do is I like to play the role of the average knucklehead, and not be with good form and just kind of move somebody around and swing and telegraph and do things and start with a relatively mild intensity and pace so that they learn to kind of feel the energy of what's natural and not somebody that knows the score and knows the game.
It's going to get straight.
Yeah, and I think that can be a real problem, is thinking that your training partner is going to move just like somebody on the street. So that's that's one thing, is I like to play the role, whether it's empty hands where I'm just kind of doing some swinging stuff and I am telegraphing, so they can learn to see that. And then I'll go back to better form so they learn to deal with that and aren't just always waiting for a telegraph. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this should all probably be separate issues rather than all under number 5, the challenge of the first exchange. So in other words, you see so many videos where somebody does a strike or a block, and then they shower the person with 10,000 strikes while they somehow stand there and don't fall down or don't move and don't drop their stick and don't do any of those things or their knife, and that would happen most likely in the real world.
We
And
cough.
number two,
We cough. Sorry, I just
and, and yeah, I
had
know
something
you got to
stuck
do
in my
something.
throat.
You got to do something for that cough. And so my concern is that first couple strikes, hand, head, hand, something, elbow, head, hand, elbow, something. The first one or two strikes, but the follow-ups are all secondary to getting some kind of authoritative initial exchange. That's number one. And so I think the training would emphasize that first exchange. The second thing, and then the next thing after that, that really again should have been a separate category rather than part of the number 5 question, is who is your sample? If my sample of who I'm training for is Eric Knaus, well, that makes my training really easy because I'm just going to just skip it. I'm just going to say forget about it, give up the whole damn thing, and just go and just spend time, not waste any
Just
time
go like
training.
this. Just
I'm just gonna
just go like this.
I'm just gonna waste. I'm not gonna waste any time training. I'm just gonna get to all those books I've been wanting to read, and not waste any time training. I got a stack of books that I'm working getting through because, well, what would you do with Eric Knaus? Well, I know what I would propose to do. I can, but proposals, but we've talked about that, and it's very easy to say. It's like we've talked about before. And any time we've probably done an interview, Dean, we've probably said the dirtiest 4-letter word in all of martial arts is just. Well,
Just,
just maintain your distance and just strike with precision and just have
what?
perfect timing and
Just
just blah
move.
blah blah. Yeah, just do your floating cloud technique.
Just don't be there.
Yeah, just that's my favorite.
Just go to your happy place.
Yeah, just go to your happy place. So I want to say, who is your sample? And so I think that if we're talking about, I think it's good to talk about people who are better than we are, so we can say, do some problem solving to the best degree we can. But I still think that to the largest degree, we want to be most ready for a range of average knuckleheadedness. Now, your bouncer stuff, Renee, is really serves you well because you know what there's, at least in that bar setting, what a nice range of knuckleheaded responses are. But you have a lot of information. You know how people fight, what fights look like. You know something about their pain tolerance. You're talking about your hand has been broken. I think that there are people that will. There's a continuum. Some people you will hit smash that you'll hit their hand, they're going to drop it. Some people are going to hit their hand, they're not going to drop the stick. So in which case, you're moving. So that's why sometimes one of the training things I do is I'll move and I'll strike at somebody and they'll have them hit and strike me until I drop the stick, or drop the knife, and then they can maybe either kick the knife away or something, and then because if they're continuing to cut me
So you
10
give
times.
intentional diminishment? Is that, if I'm understanding that correctly?
Say that again.
Intentional diminishment you give them?
I want what they're doing to be relevant to the threat that I still pose or don't pose anymore.
Okay.
Because I see so many videos where somebody, I'm not saying there's this site on Facebook, Filipino martial something. Anyway, but I've seen videos posted there where somebody.
It wouldn't be a FMA discussion. I mean,
Oh my God, you're right. Thank you. But people posting things where somebody grabs your shirt and I pull out a knife and stick you and first cut your wrist and then stab you to the gut or slash your neck 10 times. And I'm thinking, say hello to your jailmate. You just that you can't justify If somebody is a small woman and a guy is dragging them to a car, then you can justify a lot more force. But some guy just grabbing your shirt and you pull a knife and you stick them 20 times,
Good luck
I
in
just,
court.
Can we be realistic when it comes to this though? Like, listen, if I had to use a blade and someone's holding on to me, I'm not going to cut their arm if I can already reach them. You know what I mean? Like a lot of this stuff is like fantasy stuff, which it's like, yeah, they're grabbing the neck and they're passing people around. Like when people doing stuff with tomahawks, I'm like, dude, that guy's head's already on the ground. You're not passing people's bodies around like that. But besides that, actually, I wanted to just go back on a drill that I like to do. It has nothing to do with stabbing people, by the way.
oh,
Um,
well, we're not interested then.
all right, well. So you were talking about, like angle 1 and 2 and having people move around. There's a drill that I'm not going to say I invented it. I never really saw anybody doing it, so that's why I'm saying that. Um, but it became pretty popular when I was doing it in Europe. And what we're doing is 1s and 2s, and you're not aiming for the stick. You're aiming for the person's head. So if the person's stick's not in the way, you're hitting them, and it's chambered. You can't do the window wiper, and you're moving around. And once I found people got comfortable with that, I had a third person with a mask and gloves that would get behind one of the people as they do the 1s and 2s and just started throwing them around, pushing them forwards, backwards. And they had to learn to keep moving, doing the 1s and 2s while they're completely off balance, being pushed forwards, backwards, and everything else. And I found that it really messed with them, but it really dialed in that I have to survive this in an unpredictable kind of environment. So just wanted to share that drill with you.
Well, or you could have them drink like a 6-pack first and
I
then
don't drink anymore, so
And they'll do
I'm
it
not
on
going to
their
condone
own.
it.
have them stumble around. So um, there's the point I think that making with a bunch of these things is it's nice to do something where you're constantly saying, whatever we're doing, how does this match? Is this getting me towards a real skill? Either is the technique seem to match what can be done in real time, or and is one thing. It's like there was a time when Dan and Asano started to work with a class that had been doing starting with media stuff, and he started to do Largo long range stuff, and he said, people sometimes say, well, why, if we can just do this Largo stuff, why would we want to learn media? I mean, no, he said, people want, the reason I'm not teaching Largo first is because if I taught you Largo first, you wouldn't want to do any of the media. You wouldn't feel, you'd be like, well, why am I doing that? And one can easily say that ideally at long range, or at Largo at media. That was a really interesting one that Edgar was the guy that emphasized that for me, which was kind of new to me because I generally was learning media as you're checking and then you're hitting the head. But Edgar's media, Largo at media, was not checking anything. He was just saying that he had faked your stick out of the way and he was putting that stick on your head from as far away as he could be, but still putting the stick on your head. He's not checking anything. He doesn't have a checking hand there because your stick is just not around. He had
Steve, would there be like Dave and maybe you touched upon this with me in our several conversations. Is there an argument for a hybrid range Largo media?
Is there an argument?
Yeah,
There is to me.
that's not. I agree. I wanted your perspective on that. And maybe this is something we've talked about.
So, for example, well, to be specific, I don't remember necessarily talking about this, but I would say that there's longer media and closer media. So, in other words, and I'm not okay. When generally speaking, it's considered that when you're doing media, middle range training, that when you sweep the stick and check the hand and then hit the body or hit the head, that really you'd be smashing the hand and checking the hand and then hitting the head. But that's assuming that your head is inside the trajectory of the stick. In other words, it's possible that you could hit a hand and I check the hand and the stick still comes around and hits you in the head. So in that case, you want to actually, in other words, rather than hitting the hand, you actually do want to deflect the stick. And then if your head is closer and you felt that your head would be inside the arc of a stick that was stopped by stopping the hand, then you would actually be hitting the hand. But Edgar's media, largo et media, is a different thing. There's no checking involved. He's just saying that he has flummoxed you, fooled you into getting your stick out of the way so he can hit your head from the longest range he can without having to worry about a check.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was so, it was infuriating.
At
Just
the
sparring with him.
at the gatherings that you went to, did you fight with anything besides sticks? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, knife, a little bit of knife. I'm laughing because instinct, or the moment, the emotional moment is funny. And I wasn't doing it hard, so I wouldn't be surprised if he even remembers it. I would expect him to not necessarily remember this, but we weren't filming, but our sparring with knife with Mark Denny, and at one point we crashed, and I found myself not just on his hand, but I could grab the padding on his hand and hold on to that, and then I started just intuitively trying to not stab him in the mask, but stab under the mask, so I could try to, like I was like trying to. I just found myself trying to go for the throat instead of stabbing him in the mask. And I thought I was being realistic. Well, there's a hockey glove I can grab, so grab the hockey glove. Okay, and there's a mask in the way. Why would I want to stab somebody in the mask? Get under the mask.
It was funny when I fought Eric in that 2009 camp. In that exchange, in that video, he actually broke two of my ribs, and
He was
my
going for
buddy,
4.
yeah, more than likely. But one of my friends was getting ready to fight him, like do a stick fight with him, and I thought I'd give him some motivation. So I walked up and was like, "Damn it, ribs are broken, I can't breathe."
Jeez, that was
I
nice.
pulled up my shirt. There's all these puncture marks and one on my neck, and I was like, "I think the guy tried to kill me." And I was like, just like really selling it. I'm like, "Who are you fighting next?" He goes, "Eric." I'm like, "Good luck." Just walked away.
You're a prince among men.
I was gonna
I
say
I am
that was
I
so.
am a motivational speaker.
Yeah. I guess this um, comes back to also this is relevant to everything we've been saying is, and I can't remember if Dan said this or if he said this was from Bruce, but it doesn't matter because it's relevant. He said, you don't want to answer the question as much as question the answers. If you question the answers, then it's an ongoing thing. Once you say, "Oh, I've answered the question," it's like the door's closed, chapter is over. I've got the answers. As opposed to saying, "Okay, where could this go wrong?" And so for everything I do, I look for where it could go wrong or where it can be countered. So hopefully we have some kind of answer for that, and also just so we don't get complacent.
I ask myself that question every day. How is this going to go wrong?
What is going to happen today?
What is going to happen today?
Uh,
Hey,
Well,
I
you
have
just
another question for you, just because I wasn't there those days. Did Guru Dan ever show up to any of the gatherings or any of the fights?
well, it's not like I went to a bunch. I mean, I
Mm.
did. I don't even know if it was a gathering. I mean, I did some after class sparring with the guys.
Like the Midnight
Be,
Club?
I guess that's what it was before
Yeah.
there was the Dog Brothers thing, and then
oh yeah, the after hours. Yeah.
the initial thing. And like I said, this is before I really developed a better stroke. And somebody might say, "Well, do you think you'd do any better?" Well, I'd like to believe I would, but it doesn't matter. The point is it was really instructive. It was like really, it was a really kind of eye-opening thing, and it also really does again more than it really pushes you to say, to push your attributes, just the working on the stroke and working on the authority of basic stuff. It's not like I'm thinking, oh man, I really learned that I really need to work on my lubud drills. Oh man, I really got to work on my disarms, and I really got to work on my, I don't know, my, whatever it is that it just never happened. It's like I
When the
said again.
reality of the question is, man, I really hope I don't piss my pants in front of people.
As that caveman is coming at my head.
Oh, and did you know that Dean's going to be starting to come to some gatherings as well and get back out there?
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
I've sent him a blindfold because he's very confident. He
Oh,
doesn't.
I'm
He
just
doesn't. He
gonna.
doesn't need to see. He can just let the force guide him.
I'm telling you, the force is going to be with me, and I'm just going to wander, and then put my hand
That's
out.
right. That's right. That's right. So
it's like, how do I
I
end up in a parking lot?
and I will say that the reason my training, I do teach. I teach privately.
Hmm.
That's I should mention that
Which is excellent, by the way, and I can
as a,
attest.
well. Thank you. And I should mention that on my my knife course, I'm just gonna, it's like there's so many people that are the great grandmaster this and the third degree grandmaster that and grandmaster this. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm Steve. You know, you guys are you guys, and I'm Steve. And can we all just be respectful? I don't like the title thing, and I don't like the puffery. But I will say that there are things that I'm showing on my knife course that I just don't see anybody else doing. Period. That is the stuff that my teachers most wanted to avoid showing anybody because of its effectiveness. And that is things like if somebody's actually trying to smash or cut your hand, if somebody's going to try and cut your hand, how do you use that against them and not just avoid it, but how do you actually use that against them? And that is, I'd say, the most, if I wanted to say the single most useful, not talked about thing, then I would say that's it.
Yeah, the program's excellent, and I mean, your instruction is excellent. I'm looking so forward to September. Um, yeah,
How
You
do
don't,
how do
you don't
people
need
get
to,
a hold of you?
you don't need to say anymore, Dean. Your check's in the mail. Your check's in the mail.
so I'm good. Like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not in arrears or anything.
yeah. That's right.
Okay.
The stipend is there.
How do people get a hold of you? Is it
I am so unobscure. I'm on. I have two Instagram things under. I have Steve Grody Martial Arts and Steve Grody my other stuff that's more for my graffiti related documentary. And I have a a Venmo page. The Venmo, if you looked up Steve Grody Venmo, you could look through the video stuff that's there. And I even have this stevegrody.com, this very moribund, underattended gathering dust site. And I'm, I'm easy to find,
I didn't even
but
know you had a site. Oh my gosh, what's the site? What's the site again?
just stevegrody.com, but it's just a list of, I was posting a bunch of little concept things there,
Okay.
but drills and a lot of drills, based primarily empty hand,
Okay.
and a lot of drilling suggestions. But it's a vicious circle because it didn't seem like people went there. I stopped posting a bunch of stuff, and because I
Yeah.
stopped posting stuff, people stopped going there.
Well, I
And
just
people,
posted it now. I mean, I hope that's correct. I just put one word, stevegrody.com.
yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
it's very under maintained, but there's still material there to with drilling suggestions and that I think are useful for anybody that actually
For sure.
is looking for things to train rather than just thinking that you know I've learned everything I need to learn at Jack Wando.
Yeah, there's if you like obscure stuff, there's Dean Franco Dance, which is also that's an Instagram page. I don't know if his OnlyFans is up and
It's
running still,
private. You have to.
and I know it's private, but listen, you gotta let You got to let the world see some
And
of
it's
that stuff.
paid. You have to become a
You
member.
have to pay to see it.
Patreon only.
And listen, honestly, since I joined, I lost about 15 pounds. I haven't been able to eat.
It's
It's
highly
been,
cardio. Okay, it's very
it's,
aerobic.
Um,
yeah. You know what? I've never seen anybody do that with a tuning fork before. It was pretty interesting.
So, Steve,
so
I can show you, Steve, if you're interested. I can show you a little demo when I come out there. Okay.
cool. Well, I am planning on doing some swing dance training with you and Tracy,
Yes. So, you know,
Wow.
yeah.
Awesome.
which, as far as I'm concerned, the best sensitivity exercise there is social um, non choreographed social dance, whether it's, but in my case, swing dance.
Mm,
Because you can't push somebody around, you have to communicate clearly without it being forceful. Anyway, but yeah, so I think that we've covered those things about. We would encourage all of us here to question what it is and look to see how it could be either to say being responsible. I guess one of the things is being responsible for your own training, being responsible for the qualities that make it work, looking to see if you're bridging the gap between the theory of doing technique in class and whether you're able to do it in real time outside of choreography, looking for the problems in a technique, if looking to see if the problems are in a technique, or is it in the training method, or is it in your attributes. I mean, that Dan in one of his books was saying why a technique won't work. And what he meant to say was looking for why a technique might fail. Is it the technique? Is it my training method? Is it my conditioning? It's a way of, and this way of thinking keeps it from, I'm just memorizing stuff. I think a lot of people leave because they get bored because they're just memorizing stuff. They know intuitively doesn't have anything to do with the real world,
mm,
and they're just learning more and more stuff. There's a student that comes here from New York periodically, and he works with this Filipino group there, and they do all this material. They never ever do anything that's interactive in any way other than go like this, set technique, not a single choice reaction drill.
mm.
And I said, what you should do is talk to some of the other people in class. Say, hey, do you want to get together? Just you and get together a little group and see, just move around, play around, see what we can do. Because
I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, like maybe they might not be able to articulate fully, but again, it was probably a boredom, and subconsciously they knew, like, this isn't really the real.
yeah, something's going on here. Something's wrong here. I know the secret, all the secret sets, and I still don't feel like I could do diddly squat.
I know it's like when they brought me down to the basement, I knew there was like just something wrong here. You know what I mean? I just,
Well, at least you didn't end up in a barrel like so many others. Anyway,
I, I don't know. You got to push yourself a little bit.
yeah,
Mm,
And like you said, there's a group that I used to belong to, and we used to like just. It was definitely a knuckle dragger group. We just really like beat each other up. But that group now, they don't even spar. Like it's like nope, no, we don't do that anymore. We don't. I don't get it. Like it just you got to do some sort of contact to see if you at least get a feel for it, right?
you got to move with somebody. If your timing's there and
mm.
where your attention is. Yeah, but I think that there's a way to train. Okay, so I'll just, I'm not training the killer elite, but I'm concerned with people's functionality. And but there is like we've been saying, broken record. People have to be responsible for their own training ultimately, and those that have worked on the stuff, not just come to class, their session, and then left, but actually worked on their stuff. They have found that when they interact with people that they don't know, that are trained or untrained, that can get very uncooperative, that they found the stuff was there for them, and I never beat the crap out of them.
Mm.
I never knocked them silly. I put some pressure on for them to pay attention, but it was there for them. Um, and in one case, in both cases, they knew that they had X amount of pain tolerance and had done a certain amount of stuff elsewhere, or they could knew they had some pain tolerance. But it was never. They got some good things that worked under pressure that did not come because I was giving them concussions or injuring them. And I'm not willing to do that. And I think
That's
that,
bad. That's real bad.
and I think that your willingness to pound on people is, has served probably people very well, but different teaching personalities.
Listen, I'm not into beating people up, but I am into pushing people to their limits. Just like I like being pushed to my limit as well. I think there's a magical window of opportunity for learning when you get to that stage where it's like,
Mhm.
I remember when I used to box and there's a guy there, Ralph, who's just beat the tar out of me in there. And like every class, I'd be in the corner of the ring, just eating one hand after another, getting liver shots. And then one day when I could feel my body sinking, and I heard this voice in my head that said, "Fuck you." And then I just started hitting back. And it was like this beautiful moment where I learned that I can do this too if I put my mind to it, right?
Mhm.
And I literally heard that voice. I don't know. It couldn't.
You,
It wasn't even my voice. I don't know whose voice it was.
Oh, it was that voice that tells you to kill people occasionally.
Yeah,
Kill
yeah,
them, kill them all, kill them all. Well, and I'm happy to encourage people to go places where they can, knock each other around and stuff and whatnot. I'll put a certain kind of pressure on them that I feel is good, but there's only so far I myself am willing to go. And
this is why gatherings are, to me, are so important. I
mm,
think they really give you a safe-ish environment to go
mhm.
out there, and especially the guys who are the veterans. Like they're gonna push you like to places like they're gonna push you hard, but it's still pretty.
Oh, it froze on the secrets.
uh-oh.
He was just about to share the secrets with
I
us.
know. I think all right. The
Okay,
same red screen could be, usually, generally speaking, is usually internet related.
right. Okay. Well,
Hmm.
anyway, I think we've covered our
No, no,
stuff.
it was excellent. And again, I thank you so much for coming back on. I
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me back on.
Yeah, anytime. You always have the green light, Sir Steve. Anytime.
Well, thanks. If I can think of something else relevant to say, I will be. I would love to discuss it with you
Yeah.
because I know you're you're not lazy. You're not lazy physically or mentally,
No, always.
and that's why I enjoy talking with you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, of course, we'll be talking again. So for
Yeah.
um, it's like literally, well, after this week, it'd be two weekends from this coming Friday.
I
Yeah,
think so. I think so.
yeah. Well, we're on the Monday, of course, but
On a
yeah,
Monday. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Renee, wherever you may be.
Okay, I will. Yeah, and but yeah, but obviously, I will be in touch before then.
Okay, great. I tell everybody I'll read through all the comments and see if there's anything I need to actually respond to at some point.
Yeah. Okay.
Specific questions. Okay. Thanks everybody for being here.
All right, Steve. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Talk
Bye.
to you later. Bye.
And that wraps up episode 24. Next Monday, FMA discussion. We are having, I can tell you, and the flyer's not out yet, but it will be out soon. And that will be, bear with me, it's a excuse me, it's a husband and wife, minor niece. School's been 4 years now, and it's kind of, matter of fact, Monday, September 1st, and it's going to be the 4 year anniversary for them. So it's going to work out well as far as timing. And no, I didn't plan that. It just worked out. But Jackie, Bradbury, and husband will be coming on Monday and 4:30 Eastern time. And as always, the flyer will be posted, and you guys can see it. But yeah, thanks everybody that watched and submitted comments and questions. And if I don't talk to you, you'll see me on Monday. FMA discussion. All right, thanks all.